Welcome to this on-demand recorded training for developing an effective Lync rollout and adoption strategy. Let's talk about our objectives for this session. We're going to define technology adoption. We'll talk about why it's important, and we'll also talk about the technology adoption curve and barriers to adoption. We'll then move on to consider a model for proper technology adoption, and we'll talk about some best practices, and we'll also explore adoption resources that are available for you, specifically the Lync Rollout and Adoption Success Kit, and how to implement adoption tools and resources. So let's talk adoption beyond deployment. So I think sometimes there's confusion between deployment and adoption. They are not the same thing. So we consider that deployment is critical, but it also is only part of the picture. So readiness planning is just as crucial, and I think a lot of times that's the missing piece. So deployment plus readiness planning equals adoption. Just to define adoption specifically, it's the habitual use of a technology, and it's occurred when your users just use the technology day to day, day in, day out. It becomes essential to them. So why is this important? Well, because you are spending time and money on the technology. So it impacts your bottom line. And the sooner you can get people to use the technology, the sooner you achieve that investment return. Also, it's not just about money, it's about your goals. Presumably, you have some reasons for deploying this technology. You have some ideas about how it might improve your productivity, allow people to do things more easily. So those business goals are just as important. Part of this is about employee satisfaction. When they're happy with you supporting them with good new technology, that really impacts your reputation. And what we're looking for are reduced escalations, increased productivity, the employees trusting the IT department and management to buy the proper technology and to roll it out successfully. So when you have that trust, you build momentum. When you come around to other technologies that you roll out, you've already got that trust and you've built that momentum for those future initiatives. So what are the problems? Well, we've listed some of them here. These are the kinds of things that we've seen over and over again, and you might recognize some of these. These are common pitfalls. Sometimes when you go about planning a technology project, you're not really sure what success looks like. You're not really sure about your goals, and you're sometimes a little bit vague. So the more clarity you can bring to that planning process, understanding what you want and what you expect to achieve, I think that's going to be helpful for you. Also, I think sometimes we minimize the effect on our users of the change. So change management is really important, and understanding your users. We'll talk about some tools to help you understand your users in just a moment. Sometimes you do a pilot and you don't extend that to people other than your rollout team or your IT team. We've seen this happen all the time. Yeah, we tested it in the IT department. Well, IT users are not like everybody else. So they may not use the technology in the same way, and they may also come at technology with a different point of view. Sometimes messaging fails to include the benefits for the end users. So you'll deploy a technology, but people don't understand why they should use it. Sometimes your plan is not adjusted after the pilot, so you're really ready to get things deployed, and you're trying to stay on your target dates, but you don't take the time to make adjustments. So that's an important piece. Sometimes you tell people that a change is coming, but you only tell them via email. And we know that people get inundated with emails sometimes. Sometimes they just skim through them or file them away. So in terms of an awareness strategy, we have some ideas for you to maximize your communication and awareness. Sometimes we see that readiness resources are not easily found. So when I say readiness resources, I mean training or frequently asked questions documents. So it's helpful to put that all in one spot and publicize that widely. Make sure that they're adequate as well. So we'll talk about that a little bit as we talk about the training plan. And finally, one of the things we see is that your help desk agents are not prepared to address your users' needs. So maybe you can relate to some of those things. The other thing that's important to understand is that the technology adoption curve is real. This is actual real research that has been done. And what we see here is that at the beginning of a technology, we have people who will adopt it quickly because they're innovators. They like technology. They're enthusiasts. Maybe they work with technology. So those are your IT department, maybe some executives who are really into technology, maybe people within the company who are just excited about getting their hands on any new technology. Early adopters, visionaries also fall into these categories. So those folks are great, but they're not the majority. So we have the majority over here on the other side of the chasm. And we've got pragmatists, early majority pragmatists. Those people will adopt the technology pretty quickly. They realize, you know, things are changing. I'm going to get on board. We have late majority conservatives, so people who are not quite ready. They're going to wait and see, play it safe, wait and see how things turn out. Maybe after other people tell them the technology is pretty great, they'll jump in. And then we have skeptics. And those folks are going to be the last people to adopt. So what you're trying to do is bridge this chasm, get all of these people to adopt a little bit more quickly, and have this be a smooth process. But you do have to understand that not everybody is the same. So in order to get across that gap, you may want to allow people to understand that this new technology is an improvement. So you may want to frame the message. They need to think that this innovation is going to be helpful. So maybe you'll point that out. You'll point out what the advantages are. So they need to perceive this as advantageous. You may also want to reiterate how this technology fits in with your corporate culture. So does it fit in with existing values? Perhaps with Lync, you want to emphasize that it can reduce travel, which saves money or reduces greenhouse gases. So again, what you're doing is showing how the technology is compatible with your corporate culture and with the needs of the individuals within a corporate culture. One big question is, how difficult is the technology to use? So Lync, I think, is fairly simple, but there are some things that can be a little bit hard to know, and I think training can bridge that gap to some degree. So the other thing is trialability. Can the technology be sampled through a trial, a demo, a pilot program? We're going to recommend very strongly that you do have a pilot. And I'll talk a little bit about turning your pilot people into champions. So the other thing that's important is how your end users are able to see the results and see the benefits of the innovation. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Part of that is change management. In fact, a lot of this is about change management. So we have some tools available for you, and I'd like to talk about the Lync adoption framework. So this is a process, an approach that has been refined here at Microsoft. We have a group of people here who work on the adoption and training team. And we work with customers on having a successful rollout and adoption. So the main thing to understand is that we always begin with the end users in mind from day one, even from the planning stage. The rollout activities run in tandem with the technical deployment. So deployment is critical, but also critical are the rollout activities. And we'll talk about those very specifically in just a moment. We do have very specific phases that address help desk, user readiness, and we'll talk about those focus areas here. Now, we have phases in this framework. You can see there's 5 phases. We begin with the planning phase, where we define the project scope, assemble a team to enact the rollout, and also here's where you're going to establish goals and metrics. So goals, what are you trying to achieve? Are you going to use Lync to replace your PBX system? Are you going to use Lync for your retail people to keep in touch, your sales team? How are you going to use Lync? It's a pretty flexible technology. So define what your goals are. Maybe set some metrics. So maybe by a certain date, you're going to have so many users. There's things you can do to measure how successful you are. So know what your goals are, know when you get there. The other thing you'll do in this planning phase is you'll talk a little bit about barriers. You're going to talk about issues that may be specific to your company and address those proactively. It's good to know about those things and to think about those things before you get there. The proof of concept is the next phase, and that's where you set up the technology as a test. And you're going to do this in a lab environment. So when I say a lab environment, it's not necessarily your real-world network. You're going to have your team install the client, and you're going to play around with the technology and just test your initial assumptions. Does Lync do what you think it does? And in this proof of concept phase, you'll also be working to resolve any technical issues. Okay? So still we're pretty tightly confined here with the rollout team, the IT group. When we get to the pilot, this is where you're going to be branching out, putting the technology into your production environment with some users. Not everybody, so this is not a full deployment, but you're going to deploy to some people. Now, with your pilot, I'm going to recommend that you gather a diverse group of users, so not just the IT folks. Yes, you do want to have IT people within the pilot, absolutely. You want to define the goals of the pilot. What are you testing? We have some test plans in the kit that I'll share with you in just a moment. And really important, you need to gather feedback. Your pilot is only as good as that feedback. Give yourself time in between the pilot and the rollout to make any changes that you need to make. So now we get to the rollout. This is the grand launch. You may decide that you don't need to do a launch across all of your offices all at once. You might have a phased approach. That's fine. It depends on how big your company is, quite honestly. So during this rollout phase, it's really, really critical to communicate. And not just communicate, hey, we're going to have some new technology, but you want to communicate the value. Why are you doing this? What's in it for the users? So communicate that value. Then at that very same time, people need all of their resources all ready to go. So at that point, you should have a Lync website perhaps set up, or perhaps a frequently asked questions document. Maybe that's when you coordinate some targeted training. So maybe some of your pilot users will turn into trainers. Maybe they'll do informal training. Maybe they'll do formal training. So that's where you're going to have all the resources lined up ready for the rollout so that people have everything at their fingertips that they need. Finally, you get to the run state. So you've rolled things out, you've addressed big issues, and you're going to continue to stay on top of technical issues, and you're going to start reporting on your success. So you're going to go back to your metrics, back to your goals, and find out, did we get there? Did we get where we wanted to go? You do need to continue user communication. Also within the run state, as you go on, 3 months, 6 months, a year, you might need to push updates. And then remember, you're having new employees come in, so those new employees need to be apprised of the technology. Perhaps you'll make sure that they have training available, resources available, etc. So this framework is flexible. I did talk about it as if you were all at the planning phase. You might be well into your adoption process. That's okay. You can incorporate it wherever you are. As I said earlier, your rollout does not have to be a grand launch with every individual getting the technology all at once. You could launch by location. You could also launch by workload. Maybe you're going to deploy the instant messaging and presence initially, and then later you're going to have conferencing. Maybe after that you'll have enterprise voice. Whatever you do in terms of your rollout, please communicate clearly what's happening. And the other thing I should point out is that this framework is good for small organizations as well as large organizations. So your strategies might be a little bit different. Your methodology is going to be similar. It's customizable. You can adjust this. I'll show you in just a moment how you can take our project workbook and customize it. And you can customize it for your own goals. And let's also talk about how this is repeatable. So again, once you build that trust and you work through this methodology, I think you'll find that it will help you as you need to roll out new technologies or even as you roll out client upgrades. So as you're moving, let's say, from Lync 2010 to Lync 2013, you can go back into the methodology and say, all right, let's do a little project scope, talk about our goals. We'll do some testing, a little pilot, a rollout of the new technology, and then again the run state. So you can adapt it. All right. I do like this quote here from Yogi Berra. If you don't know where you're going to end up someplace else. So I think that's apropos. All right, so this is a recording. I don't have a polling slide in here, but think to yourself, where are you now? So are you at the beginning? Are you in the middle of the process? Are you at the end of the process where you rolled something out and it didn't really take so much? That's okay. You can find out where you are and you can go back and catch up. So let's talk about some resources that are available for you. The main resource is right here. It's called the Rollout and Adoption Success Kit. So that's RASK for short. And if you go to this URL, you'll find our kit. It's a comprehensive rollout guide. It follows the adoption framework that I just spoke about. It can be applied to Lync Server or Lync Online. So some people may be working with Lync Online as part of O365. Other people may have purchased the server software and the client licenses, and they're going to actually deploy it on their very own servers. So we've got tools in there for both. The idea behind this kit is that it is based on years of experience with our team and proven results. So we get good results with our customers, and we want to share this with you. So there's templates, there's resources. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. We want to share that information with you. We also have some guidance and best practices, some challenges, and getting started assistance. So this is what the RASK kit looks like. When you go to that web page, you'll see those 5 phases. And when you click into any of those phases, you're going to see the discovery questions and the context of why is this phase important. So for example, when you're in the beginning phase of planning, you can go over here and look at the questions, and those questions are really going to help you as you gather your team together. They're going to help you ask those pertinent questions and really dive deep into your company and figure out what are our goals, what are our issues, what do we hope to achieve. All right, so in terms of getting into the specific phases, you'll see that when you click and then scroll down the page, you'll see resources. So if you're in the awareness area, you'll find templates for emails. You'll also have user satisfaction surveys. So there's all sorts of things that we've done before. We want to share those templates with you. Of course, you can download these things and you can modify them. Not everybody is the same. So let's take a quick look at the kit live in real time. I'm going to share my desktop and we're going to take a look at how this works. I do want to point out a few things in terms of navigation. Here's your home page. If you dive into one of the phases, you can always go back to the home page by clicking on that bar up top. And when you are on the home page, right up front, we have some key resources that you may wish to get right away. So the workbook and the readiness report. If I click here, it's going to take me to my first zip file that I can download. It's going to have these resources. The workbook is an Excel spreadsheet that's super, super nice. It's got all sorts of macros built into it, and that's a critical tool. And also the reports are very, very handy. We'll take a closer look at those in just a second. Now, I would also like to show you that as you get into the kit, over here, when you download additional zip files, you'll notice there's either 1 asterisk or 2 next to the various downloads. So you've got the 1 asterisk, which is going to include the workbook, the reports, and additional tools like templates, checklists, etc. And then the 2 asterisks is primarily training. So these are going to be the quick reference cards that you can download and modify, training videos that you can put on your very own intranet, self-paced training courses. You also have a link out here to our live instructor-led training. And that could be very, very handy as well. You can take these other classes. You can point your users to these classes. So let's come out of sharing. And now you've seen the kit just a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about those very resources. So this is that Excel workbook. And it's got a couple of pages, or quite a few pages actually. There's a dashboard where you can kind of see at a glance where you are in terms of your progress. Over here on the various pages, you can indicate whether you've started a particular task or you're halfway there or you're finished. So take this workbook, please modify it. We've got some sample timelines, so you'll see here under target completion that we give you a certain number of weeks out. So 16 weeks before deployment, you should be planning. Those are just sample timelines. You can change them. So feel free to adjust all of those items within that workbook and use that workbook as you go about your planning process. The reports are twofold. We have a deployment readiness report, and we also have a success factors status report. So the deployment is a little bit more technical in nature. So it's more about deployment. So link topology, infrastructure configuration, devices, so user training. So that's kind of broken down. You can see over here that the status is listed. And these are nice reports to have when you're holding your meetings. Success factors over here. These are things that we've identified that make you successful or are critical or helpful in making your adoption successful. So we've noticed that if you have strong executive sponsorship, you're probably going to be more successful. So keeping these things in the forefront is helpful. This report will help you do that. You can see where you are again, looking quickly at the status. You can jot down notes in here. Again, these are just tools to use for your meetings. So I talked about the various zip files and the core planning resources. Here's a great image to help you understand what's in the various zip files. Admittedly, sometimes it's a little bit hard to figure out what you're getting before you download it. So the core planning resources include those readiness reports that I just spoke about and the workbook. That's the Excel workbook. And then here in the 1* resources, we have things like user satisfaction surveys, email templates, a launch event. That might be something you would do in terms of awareness during that deployment phase where you have a big kickoff event. We've got a sample presentation for you to modify. So again, we've done this. We want to provide the materials to you so that you can take those materials and deploy them for your own adoption. We have other resources for the help desk. We also have planning resources. We have tools for measuring the impact of your Lync rollout. So there's lots and lots of documents in this 1* file. And then all of the training resources should be here in the 2* file. Okay? So no need to reinvent the wheel. You can use the success criteria document to help you as you talk about the planning and what you're doing and how you know if you've achieved success. The workbook, the reports we talked about, the pilot task checklist, that's super helpful. Again, you can modify it. Some best practices for selecting your group of pilot users, and then the training downloads. All right, let's put it all together. So today, you can go to the RASK site, download your 3 files, get everything on your desktop, and start looking through those materials. Now, you probably want to map your organization to one of the current phases to figure out where you are. Are you in the planning phase? Are you in the proof of concept? So know where you are, and then confirm that you've covered everything in the previous phases. So take a look at the discovery questions in those previous phases, review the project workbook, take a look at the tasks, make sure you've accomplished all those tasks, and then once you've done that, you can proceed and move on through that phase to the next. So as you talk with your team, really use those discovery questions to prompt thoughtful consideration of your deployment and adoption. Review the best practices so everybody's on the same page. Review the common challenges so people know what those pitfalls are. Take a look at the readiness report and the project workbook with everyone, and make sure everybody has the RASK page bookmarked so they can review it on their own. Assign people their various tasks. That's what you'll do with your team. And then as we meet week to week, measure. Make sure that you're up to date with your current phase. Make sure that everything's on track. If you need to adjust your timeline, by all means do that. All right, let's talk a little bit more about measuring. So there's lots of different ways to measure. We've got some ideas for you in the kit. That's going to be in the 1* download. I can suggest any number of ways to measure. For example, if you're going to try to save money on your travel budget, using Lync to have meetings rather than sending people by car, by plane, then you certainly can measure your current travel budget and see if it goes down after you deploy Lync. What about user satisfaction? That's important. Maybe you'll measure user satisfaction. So there's a lot of different ways to measure. Use those tools in the kit and our suggestions to spark the conversations to find the way that you're going to measure your goals specifically. So the other thing I can't stress enough is value messaging. So not just what's going to happen, but why is it happening and why is it valuable to them? Is it going to help them do their jobs better? Is it going to make them more efficient? So for me, I can tell you that Lync allows me to work in a flexible work environment. That's a win-win. It's a win-win for me and my employer. I can work different hours. I don't have to commute. I can work from a home office. So there's lots of ways to communicate the value messaging. Think about your users. Think about what's important to them. Think about the goals and the value of the technology. In terms of communication, when you set up your pilot, it's important for your pilot participants to know which scenarios to test, how to submit feedback, and what the deadlines are. So again, we have templates for you to make sure that you're communicating all those pertinent details. You can download the templates and adjust them. In terms of user readiness, these are training resources to make sure people understand the technology and have all the tools available to learn. So videos are helpful. You can do live training as well. You can send them to our public training site where they can sit in on live training classes there. People learn in different ways. So think about that. Use your training department, if you have a training department, to come up with a plan and a strategy. We do have some sample strategies, for example, training your executives and your executive assistants with some live trainings, using your pilot participants to conduct informal trainings. There's lots of great ideas within the RASK kit, and of course, there are the resources that you can download. Another thing that's important in terms of communication is communicating the status of your process to stakeholders. So you may have someone on the executive team who is your champion, who is really excited about Lync. They want you to do well. It's good to communicate with that person and, in fact, with the executive team overall. So let them know if you're on track or if you've fallen behind in the schedule. Communication is key. So let's talk about additional resources and also our survey. So if you are deploying Lync Online as part of Office 365, you may want to go to the Fast Track site. This is specifically for Office 365. Very, very helpful. Then I also want you to know that we have those training materials available. We have these recordings of our classes and, of course, live classes. So you can go to our Lync Learning site, and don't forget you can also point your users to our training classes. We have a high-level demonstration just to talk about Lync, what it is, why it might be helpful. We also have contacts and conversations class focused in on the instant messaging capabilities. Enterprise Voice for the voice features of Lync. We also have Meeting Basics and Present Like a Pro for those people who do a lot of formal presentations or just meeting with their colleagues and such. So I want to thank you for your time today, and I also want to let you know that we'll be sending you a follow-up email to this recording with a survey link. And if you do have the time to give us feedback, we would love to hear it. So thank you again for your time in watching this recording, and all the best of luck with your Lync rollout.